Perfect. So we're going to start our recording. Thank you again for being with us today. This is the ELL Family and Community Engagement webinar series. This is the 5th session of the series, and educators from across the state who have been awarded an NCDPI ESL Title III sponsorship have developed projects in collaboration with DPI consultants from the K-12 Standards Curriculum and Instruction Division of DPI. This is one of those projects. The group of educators that participated in each session of the series receive a sponsorship to attend a conference or a workshop. In this case, some of them attended Carolina TESOL, the Fall Conference, La Cosecha, Dual Language Conference, and the National Association of Bilingual Education NAVE Conference. So this is why they developed this session. So for today, we're going to have, this is the agenda, and we have our guest speaker, Dr. MariaRosa Rangel, Xatli Stox from the NCDPI team. We're going to have a brief recap of sessions 1 to 4, and then we're going to focus on session 5, that is how to create your ELL family engagement plan. So this is the team and NCDPI. The ESL Title III team selects in-state and out-of-state conferences and workshops quarterly, and we encourage all NC educators to apply. Once we learn more about events in the near future, as we transition from this difficult time, we will be able to share this opportunity again to more teachers and school administrators in the state. So stay tuned. Follow our Facebook group, our Twitter handle, and also if you are subscribed to our listserv, you will get all the information so you can participate. And I want to confirm that by attending today's webinar, you will be automatically subscribed to our listserv, Teachers of English Learners, and then you will start getting all our emails. We usually send an email every month with our newsletter and sometimes reminders for the different professional learning opportunities that we offer. So the team, Dr. Christy Day, our section chief, we have Marshall Foster. He is focusing on Title III compliance. Ivana Manthrower Anderson, she supports the program quality in the West. Susan Waltz, she is our ELL data specialist. And today with you all, ESL Title III consultant. Xatli, I support the East. So let's continue. And this is the information that we have, all the different sessions that we offer since December. And the idea today is that we are going to bring all those pieces together and start our plan. So we encourage you to visit the PD dashboard, and you see the link on the top in blue that says bit.ly/PD dashboard on our Google site, because then you will be able to access all the resources. And as I said before, if you want to get the certificate of attendance for the number of sessions that you attended, you can complete everything. If you have been in all the live sessions, you will get your certificate in 2 weeks. Or if you want to go and check the recordings, then you have this opportunity until next Monday, May 18th. So the webinar series is a total of 5 contact hours that attendees may submit to their school districts for CE use. So again, just check our Google site if you haven't been able to attend all the different sessions. So our recap, we had our first session with Dr. MariaRosa Rangel. She talked about the ELL family engagement research-based frameworks. Dr. Rangel shared a lot of information, and these are some of the highlights. She talked about how the different federal laws have supported the importance of families and what is their role in education. So she talked about the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965, which was reauthorized as the No Child Left Behind legislation in 2001. And this law, this reauthorization, was very specific about the role of families and how they should be involved. At that moment, we were using that term in education. So policymakers and school practitioners have recognized this as well, this importance. And then we have been seeing different changes and inclusions in policy at the national, state, and local levels. So she talked a little bit about this, and also we concluded talking about ESSA, that includes in Title I and Title III the importance of working with the families and creating opportunities for partnerships between schools and home. She talked about the terminology, parent involvement, parent outreach, and homeschool partnership, and most importantly, the difference between involvement and engagement and how these terms have evolved. We had involvement when we inform the parents, we give them all the information that they need in the language that they need. But now we're talking about engagement, in which we bring the parents to the schools and we get them involved, participating in the activities and sharing what they have at home and their different cultures and different languages. So something else, she talked about the benefits and how family engagement is not only beneficial for students, for the schools, but also for the parents, and how helping them be comfortable and coming to schools that helps student success. So she mentioned the national standards for family school partnership, and she focused on 4 different frameworks. And I love that she said that the frameworks are a roadmap. They're just kind of like a compass. It gives you the direction to develop an effective high impact strategy and initiatives for your families. It's not that you have to focus on one specific framework and complete and follow the protocol exactly as it is, but that you can use the different frameworks and see based on your context with your families and your population and the different needs that they have and the resources that you have. You see which is the one that you can use or the elements that you can use. So she talked about the dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships, the 5 principles to engage every family, the 6 different types of parent involvement, and the 4 stages of immigrant family engagement supports. So she is going to mention some of these frameworks today again. And if you didn't watch that session, then we recommend that you go back and check. And she also gave links to the different books that these frameworks are based on and some samples and different templates that you can also use in case you want to learn more about these frameworks. So during our second session, we have 2 other speakers, our friends from the public schools of Robeson County, Sandra Lopez Greenfield, the ESL lead teacher, and she invited Barbara Locklear, the parent liaison in her district. And they were talking about a collaborative approach to EL family engagement. And they share one of the projects that they have for their immigrant families in the district that is called Unpacking Dreams. I was really excited when we heard about this. She said that this is a specific project for immigrant students and their families. And she talked how all the community came together to work and help the families. So she shared how the community got engaged, how using bilingual books for immigrant families was so important. And also she suggested some strategies for implementation, how to help the parents help the students using the books, and also how to make some connections with the community. She said that bringing the books to life by partnering with higher education institutions and authors was one of the most exciting things for their families. So they had a set of books that they bought for their kids, and the kids take them home. And there was a specific book that they were reading, and the author went to the college that is nearby, and the students had the opportunity to participate in this event with the author. They learn about the author's story and then the book, and they learned that what they were reading was something really important, and they saw themselves reflected in this author. So it was really interesting to see and really exciting to learn how Robeson County and their community had come together to make this true for their immigrant students. So the third session that we had was on EL family engagement strategies and activities with our friends from Duplin County, 2 ESL lead teachers, Mrs. Adriana Marston and Maria Uribe. And they shared strategies and activities to promote family engagement. They also mentioned some barriers that they have identified as they have developed their activities in their districts, but they gave specific activities that they have used. I think they mentioned 6. We have some on the slide: the cultural night, the parent night, the project-based activities, and ESL classes. And they talk about how these strategies help parents get involved but also engaged in the school activities and being able to help their students, their children. And then our session number 4, we have Christopher Goodnight, and he is one of our teachers from Kannapolis City Schools, and he shared about ELF family engagement beyond the classroom. So when Christopher talked, he shared what he has been doing in his district, and he talked about the importance of learning what engagement truly means and what that entails. Is just, do we just translate things for parents? Are we just inviting them? Or how can we bring them and make them feel comfortable being in the school? So he talked about that, and he said, he talked about the projects he have developed. He has something called the community partnerships. He has partnered with the community college to have ESL classes in the school for the parents, and they created community centers. He talked about the coffee talks, and he shared some samples of the flyers and surveys and how this experience has been for the parents, and how now they're going in the mornings and having these classes, these sessions, so they feel that they're part of the school, and it's something that has been really enriching for their children as well. So I also recommend that you go and check that session if you haven't had the chance. So Chris set the tone for today's session with some critical questions, and I add them to the slide, and there are 4 specific questions, and I know Dr. Rangel is going to talk a little bit about this while she's talking about the different frameworks and how you can start using the different resources and strategies to create your own plan. So we have question number 1: what are the missing pieces to the puzzle at your school? 2: what can you implement that is cost efficient and truly supports the needs of your community? 3: would educational workshops work for your parents, or might there be another way to educate and support them? And does mental health and trauma play a role in families' attitudes and behaviors? Should the school be involved in these kind of workshops? So he talked about this and how he is creating some partnerships with the local businesses and different organizations. So just check his session as well, and you will learn. And if you were in his session, maybe you had a chance to write some notes about these critical questions and you're ready for today's session. Now I'm really excited. I'll be quiet because I want to introduce Dr. MariaRosa Rangel. She is going to be our speaker for our 5th session, how to create the ELF family engagement plan for your school district. So Dr. MariaRosa Rangel, we're going to talk a little bit about her. She has over 24 years of educational experience. She obtained her bachelor's degree in bilingual, bicultural, and elementary education from the Northeastern University of Chicago, Illinois, and her master's degree in school administration and doctoral degree in education from North Carolina State University. She has served as a 3rd grade bilingual teacher, a GED instructor, a Spanish and ESL teacher, an assistant principal, and district-wide LEP dual language coordinator, and a senior administrator for Latino outreach. So currently, Dr. Rangel serves as the Director for Family and Community Outreach Services in the Office of Equity Affairs for the Wake County Public School System. She is responsible for planning, developing, and coordinating family and community activities and events and programs to improve a student's academic achievement. So I welcome Dr. Rangel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rangel. Do you want to have the control so you move the slides, or I continue switching the slides?
If you want to, you could go ahead and control them for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to be back. It seemed like yesterday when we were talking about how we're going to roll this out and how you, Xatli, came together and put all the different panelists together to create this beautiful and wonderful webinars. So I'm really excited today to talk about, so So now what? What's next? We heard about all the different things, and so now how can we go about implementing our own ELL family engagement plan? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and hopefully we're going to give you the tools so that you could go back and start getting ready and think about some of the components that you might want to include in your ELL family engagement plan. So before you even start thinking about what is it that you want to develop, I want you to think about it from this perspective. We have to think about it from the equitable ELL family engagement lens. And what does that mean? When we think about equity, we always think about giving the students or families what they're lacking, right? What resources do they need? It could be academic support. It could be for families, what is it that they need, right? The resources. So, but also when you think about equity and when you think about school equity, people always think about ELL families. They think about immigrant families. They think about low socioeconomic status families. And they think about those hard to reach families, right? Because obviously there's something lacking if these families are not coming to our meetings, right? If they're not coming to the school events. So again, we have to think about it from an equitable lens, which means it's going to force us to think outside the box. And that means we really have to think about what exactly is it that we want to do. So one of the things is that we need to be able to really get to know your parents. And that is, you got to know what language your parents speak, right? So you have to know your demographics. As an ELL teacher, your regular classroom teachers are going to look at you for guidance. They're going to expect for you to know. Sometimes it's interesting because they think we know each and everybody very well, which I think it will help us to get to know those families on a personal level, right? But you need to be able to understand and know what language are your students speaking, and also what language are the parents speaking, and then two, how long have they lived in the U.S., and then two, the level of language proficiency. It would also help if you know the social economic status of your families, right? Sometimes we assume because our families are ELL families or immigrants that they are not educated or they come from a low social economics, and sometimes that is not the truth. So we have to be able to really, again, get to know our families so that we don't assume. And sometimes when we assume, well, it's not positive to do that. And then also learn a little bit about their background and cultural traditions. What do they celebrate? What do they, how do they view education? And of course, it also helps to understand the educational level. And this goes back to that the Immigrant Family Engagement Framework by Han and Love, 2015, where he talks about the different stages that our ELL parents might be at. And then we need to take into account as you develop your ELL family engagement plan so that you could better plan, right? For example, are your parents on the cultural survival mode, right? They're just worried about making sure they have making sure that they just have what they need, the essential necessity, food, a shelter a home, a shelter. So you got to think about that. And then two, and the second level, which is cultural learner, are they ready to learn more about how to navigate the educational system? Does that mean you might have to provide in their language so they could better grasp and understand how to navigate the different system, not just the educational system, but the other systems as well? And then two, you might have families that are in they're cultural connectors, which means that those families could help other families to make those connections, right? To how to navigate the educational system, how to access different programs. And then too, you might have parents who are cultural leaders, who are actually those parents that you could reach out to really help you to provide more insight to all these different families that might be at different levels. So again, it's keeping in mind who your families are, who are those parents. Okay, can you move on to the next one? Okay. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay. And then two, what I would like for you to do, and this really works, is for you to survey and do little focus group. So we believe, and I'm in the Office of Equity Affairs, and we believe that in order for us to better support those students or those parents is that we need to be closest to those that need the services, right? So that means that we need to really hear from these parents so that we could hear their voices. We could really understand their perspective and not just be our own perspective. So we need to find out from them, and you could bring them, in small groups. You could do it by grade levels. I mean, there's different ways that you could bring your parents. You could survey them as well. You could even do this by a phone call or bringing them face to face. But you really want to ask them 6 questions. 6 questions that I feel that would give you a better insight to really understand how to go about putting together this plan. And that is, how do you define family engagement? Because one of the things that I encounter in the literature when I was doing my research about family involvement or family engagement is the lack of defining it, right? People have different perspectives. They define it differently. So again, we want to make sure that we honor those voices and that we come together to a definition that the families and the school can work from. So how do you define family engagement? And then two, how do you get engaged in your child's education? And you want to hear because, as you know, our ELL feminists are very diverse. They come from different backgrounds, different countries. So it's always good to understand their perspective, right? How do you engage in your child's education? Well, we know that some parents are hands off. They feel that it is not their responsibility, that it is the school responsibility to educate and engage with the child when it comes to education. Now, if you really want these families to be engaged, well, we need to define what that looks like, but we also need to hear from them. And really, it's about honoring the curriculum of the home, how they engage with their kids, how do they motivate their kids. And again, and also understand our own perspective. So it's having that dialogue so that they can then understand, oh, this is how you want me to get engaged. Well, this is how I engage at home. But now that you provide me with some strategies, I could then go and develop those and implement those strategies. And then two, what can the school do to support your child's academic growth? When you ask this question, parents are going to give you this look like, what do you mean? And sometimes we have to help them to understand what we mean. And that is, what can we do to support you so that you could support your child, so that we could work in this partnership? So then again, your child will be successful in school. And believe me, there is not a parent that does not want their kid to become successful in school. They want their kids to do better, especially if you are an immigrant like myself, and I could understand now that my mother wanted me to have better. And for her, better meant that I could speak English. For her, it meant that I could get a better job where I could utilize both languages. For her, it meant for me to have an education. So again, it's understanding what can we do as educators, as teachers to support your child? What is it that you need? And be ready because you're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear like, well, I don't know how to access this new technology platform, or how to access the ID portal, or what is all this different Google Classroom? What is Google Meet? What is CISO? So they're going to ask you all these things. So it is our job to hear them, because when you hear them, you're going to hear some of the barriers. And then two, you could start developing a plan like, oh, maybe we need to work on this, right? We need to provide them with the tools so they could support their kids right now with remote learning, so they could understand the different platforms. So maybe they could even know how to access their own email. So again, when you really have to listen, because believe me, you're going to hear a lot. And again, they're going to be able to give you the information that you need to start putting together your plan. And then to ask them, what do we need to know about your child so we can support his or her learning? And you're going to be able to understand a lot. Maybe they don't even understand that their child might have a learning disability, and they're just telling you, well, I feel that my child does not comprehend, but I don't understand why. And two, they might not even know that they could qualify for a psychological evaluation to find out if that child might be needing special services or a 504 plan. But again, it's understanding what is it that you need. You might be able to hear that, my child does not have a computer, or we don't have Wi-Fi, or we don't even know how to go about getting one, or it's too expensive. Again, it's hearing their concerns and the needs that they might have. And then two, ask them, what else do you need from us to create a strong partnership to support you and your child's academics? And again, believe it or not, when you bring these parents, when you listen to them, you are actually building relationships with these parents, and they're going to be your strongest supporters, your alliance. That's going to be the group that you go to, the group that will be there, the group that will get you back, that will be there to support you when you have an event, the families that you can reach out to tap into other families. So again, it is critical to build this focus group. Ask them, survey them, call them, and find out and hear from them. Okay, we go to the next one. And again, the next slide talks about schools. We have to identify the barriers within the communities, so that, again, a lot of the barriers that sometimes we take for granted are the barriers that are preventing our families from being more active in the children's education. So we need to really identify those ELL barriers, and you're going to get a lot of those through your focus groups, through your surveys, through talking to your parents. And then also identify your school barriers to engage in ELL families. And again, you might want to bring in your teachers and ask them those questions, but then ask them, well, what can I do as an ESL teacher to support you? Or what can I do to support your students? What can we do? Hear their concerns. And then also, when you are meeting with them, you're also going to hear what are the barriers. And some of the barriers are going to be, well, these parents don't care, or when we call, they don't come, or, we need interpreters. How do we go about getting interpreters? How do we go about getting stuff translated? How do we go about bringing them in? So again, you're going to be able to listen a lot, and then also it's going to give you insight to what other resources you as an ESL teacher you need to tap into. Maybe you need to tap into the social worker, the counselor. Maybe you need to tap into someone from central offices that is working with families. They might be able to support you. Maybe you need to tap into Title I. Maybe you need to tap into the ESL department. Again, don't be afraid to listen to them, because again, in order for us to really create an ELL plan, we need to be able to create what those barriers are. And sometimes, we need to look beyond just the barrier. It's like an onion, right? A barrier is like an onion. You have to keep on peeling it to get to the bottom. What is the root cause of these families not getting engaged? What is it that the school is doing, maybe to push them out? Or what is it that we need to do to push them in? So again, you need to get to the root cause of how do we go about engaging these families, right? And then in my previous seminar, in the one where I talk about the different frameworks, I want to bring you back to those frameworks, because it is crucial that you use these frameworks as a tool. They are a compass. They are going to help you to design your ELL family plan. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So we talked about, the first one I mentioned was Dr. Joyce Epstein of Johns Hopkins University. In fact, when you Google family involvement or family engagement, she's going to pop, because Dr. Joyce is a very credible scholar who has written so much about family involvement, now family engagement. And she actually developed a framework that is Epstein's is the 6 pillars of parental involvement. And she talks about parenting skills and knowledge being one of those components. And then she talks about communicating between home and school. And then she talks about encouraging volunteers at schools and in the community. And then she talks about how we supporting students learning at home. And then two, how do we go about involving parents in decision making and and advocacy from the school. And then two, what is this collaboration between the school and the parents and community? And believe it or not, her framework has been so instrumental to develop the PTA national standards. And what you're going to see is an overlap because, again, they look at each other's research and they try to bring the best of it. So what I want you to do when you are thinking about your ELL family engagement plan, I want you to pull from all these different frameworks, right? So the PTA National Standards has 6 standards. One is welcoming all families. How are you going to go about welcoming all families? How are you going to communicate effectively? How are you going to support student success? And then 2, they believe that speaking up for every child. If you notice, there's the slogan for the PTA. And then how do they go about sharing power, which is the same as bringing the parents to be part of different committees, decision-making committees. And then 2, number 6 is collaborating with communities. You see an overlap between that one, the PTA National Standard, and then Epstein's, the 6 pillars. And then we talked about the 5 simple principles, the 5 principles of engagement through Dr. Steve Costantino. Man, he will kill me because I butchered his last name. Constantino, there you go, I said it right. And he talked about the culture, how do we go about engaging every family, right? The school culture. He talks about communicating effectively to build relationships. He talks about how do we go about empowering every family. And then how do we go about engaging every family in decision making? And then 2, how do we go about engaging the greater community? See this overlap? They overlap. But then it brings me to one of the frameworks that actually is one of my favorite ones, because the dual capacity building framework for family school partnership was developed by Dr. Karen Mapp. She is a professor from Harvard University, and she's written many books. One of her famous books is Beyond the Bake Sale, which I encourage you to read it. And so what happened was that the U.S. Secretary of Education actually charged Dr. Karen Mapp to come out and put together this framework. And what she did, Dr. Karen Mapp actually did not, she did not recreate the whole, let me create this new framework. No, what she did was she tapped into the different background, different knowledge, different research based on Dr. Ann Henderson. And again, Dr. Ann Henderson has written many articles and many research. She's done many research on family engagement. And then she also tapped into Dr. Joyce Epstein's work. And also what she did, she put together this framework, and this is actually version 2. There is a version 1, but she came out with version 2, and she actually it rolled out last year, and I happened to be at that conference to be part of that momentum of that epic historic moment of the dual capacity framework family school partnership version 2. And I really like this version because she takes into account all the 50 plus years of research that talks about when families get engaged, their kids do better academically. That is research based. It is true, right? When you talk about why is it important for families to get engaged, well, there's over 50 years of research that talks about it, that proves it. So obviously, the dual capacity framework and has different components. It has different parts. What I like about it is that the part 1 talks about the challenges that not only educators face, but also families face. I mean, face it, how many of us actually went to school and took a class that really talked to us about this is how you're going to engage families, and this is how you're going to engage with those hard to reach families? Not many of us did that. However, there are challenges that teachers face because they don't know how to go about engaging families, especially ELL or immigrant families or hard to reach families. And then 2, families families don't even know how to go about engaging with the school. So, it really outlines the challenges that we need to know as educators, and also some of the challenges that families need in order for us to really understand them. And then part two talks about essential conditions, right? What are the process conditions and the organization conditions that we need to be able to really engage these families? And then part two talks about the policy of program goals. And then two, what I like about this piece is that it talks about the 4 C's to build the capacity of educators and families. And I utilized a lot of this to create a plan that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But then, of course, part 4 of this framework talks about the capacity outcomes. What is it that we as educators gain out of all this? And then families, obviously, there are some positive outcomes that we can develop, and that is making sure that families know how to be engaged, knowing how families need to understand how to support their kids learning at home, but also educators learn that this is how we engage families. So again, using this framework, and Xatli, you might want to go real fast to bring me to, so here's all the parts that I just mentioned, and you're going to get all this. And so now let's get into how do we go about building this family engagement, right? Can you go to the next slide? Let me see if I can do it. There we go. So this is a template created using the family dual capacity building framework for family school partnership. And I wanted just to walk you through this, okay? Just to give you an idea. And again, in Wake County Public Schools, we are using this framework. It is part of our SIP plan. Schools know how to use it. We have been doing this work for a few years already. So this is just a planning template for you to understand. So basically, you put the school, you put the event title, whatever that is, the date, the location, and the presenters, and then the description of the event. And then if you go to the next slide, you're going to be able to see how the event will address the 6 essential components, right? So the essential conditions, right, they're part of the framework. So it's how is this event linked to learning, right? How is this alignment with achievement and learning goals? It's going to make you reflect. How would you accomplish this condition? And also, it's going to, now, this is based on the old, what do you call it, on the first version. Now, we added 6 conditions, and they took a relational out, and they added asset-based and culture responsive and respectful. So I need to change this template, but just so you know, this is how you go. You put all the different process conditions. Now they're called essential conditions, right? And it's going to make you reflect on how is this linked to learning? How is this relational? How is this collaborative, right? How is this interactive? Because we want to make sure that everything that we do is interactive. And also, too, we want to value and tap into what the families are bringing to the classroom, right? It goes back to the funds of knowledge. We want to make sure that we honor that. And then, too, how is this event culture responsive and respectful? Are we taking into account the cultures that they are represented in our school? We are honoring their cultures. How are we tapping into the funds of knowledge so that when you do this event, you are also making sure that you tap into these essential conditions that are critical to making sure that families are fully engaged. Can you go to the next one, please? And then also, too, how will this impact families and school staff? We want to make sure that you're building on the 4 C's. Remember, I told you that the 4 C's are critical in the dual capacity framework, and that is about the capability, right? What is it? We're talking about the families building their knowledge about student learning and school systems and also their skills so that they could advocate. And then two, we want to make sure that the staff, we also want to make sure that the staff builds knowledge about cultural competencies and the communities that we are working in. So again, how are you addressing this? And then to the connections, when you bring the parents in, you want them to also work on the network, right? You want to build that network so that families feel more empowered. They understand how to navigate the school system. They know who's who. They could connect to different teachers. They could network. And also to the community, bringing in agencies, sharing the resources. And again, what we are doing is working together. And then two, that builds on the confidence of the family and staff. And we want them to feel comfortable. We want them to have the self-efficacy so that they could then advocate and we could work together across cultural lines. And then two, we want to give them the cognition. We want to make sure that families build themselves as partners and understand their roles. And I think it's critical because, again, the way you define your role and the way other families define the role is very different. So we have to also understand what is the role of the school and what is the role of the families and have those discussions. So again, how are you going to make sure that you are addressing the 4 C's? And then two, next one, is you want to make sure that you do things by grade level, right? How are you going to do this? Is it going to be by grade level? What are the target subjects? What are the areas, the skills, the activity that you are going to be bringing in? And again, that helps you to put things in perspective. And then the evaluation page, which is the next slide, not slice, it's we have to always evaluate what we do. And please, I want you to understand that family engagement takes time. If you fail, so be it. Try again, but learn from those mistakes. Learn from what was it that you didn't do right. Understand what could you do done better, right? And maybe reach out to other people to help you brainstorm. So again, you want to make sure how this is linked to learning and evaluate this. And you go back to those 6 essential conditions and you evaluate, so you talk to this. But obviously, one of the things that I'm going to share with you that I didn't share here, but that I'm going to send to Xatli, is I put together a little kit about how do you go about creating a family engagement committee. It is important that you don't just do this by yourself. You need to be able to tap into other folks in your building or central services and community. And obviously, you want to make sure that you tap into a parent as well and have that become part of your family engagement committee. And I have a lot of worksheets that will guide you to creating that committee and becoming very strong. And again, if you follow the different templates, you could you're more than welcome to add it to use whatever you want. I actually borrowed this from California, and they were able to say you could use as you please. Just give us credit, which I did. So you could also do the same thing. Feel free to utilize it, and again, utilize it to your own advantage, to what might work for you. And then two, I want to bring you to the next slide about how do you go about creating your own template. So you don't have to follow this own template. Also, at the bottom of this slide, there is a link that will take you to a template where they are using the 6 pillars of Dr. Epstein. So you could just have an idea how to do this. But again, you could create your own template. The only thing that you need to utilize and make sure that you include is what goal 1. And you could have, I always tell people, don't have more than 3 goals for the whole year. And sometimes, you know what, it could just be 1 goal that you have to work with for the whole school year. But again, keep it up to 3 goals. And always revisit that with your committee to find out, well, are we ready to add another goal? Are we ready to add a 3rd goal? Or, but again, keep it up to 3 goals. And then, of course, when you're doing your plan, you want to make sure that you include a topic, event, strategy, or an activity that you're going to be focusing that's going to be part of your goal 1. Who's going to be your audience, right? What grade level? And then to who's responsible for doing what. There's a lot of parts to an event. There's a lot of parts to who's going to be responsible. And then two, what needs to be done? What resources, right? Do you need to bring food? Do you need to bring interpreters? Do you need to maybe get a community site, like if you want to do something with the community or the faith? So again, what are the resources that you are going to need to implement whatever outreach, whatever event, whatever strategy, whatever activity that you're thinking of doing? And also, I want you to think ahead. What will be some possible barriers? And brainstorm those barriers, and then come out with how can we overcome these barriers so that we know we need to make sure that we address these barriers. And then two, you must have a communication plan, right? How are you going to advertise this? They're going to be through the newsletter, Twitter, Facebook, school website. You know, is it going to be translated? We're going to need interpreters for the event, and others. I mean, think outside the box. Be creative. And then two, have a timeline. When are we going to do this? Who's responsible? And you have to follow up. You must follow up with your committee. You must follow up with whoever's doing what, who's responsible for what. And many times you have to be ready to pick up those pieces because you don't want this event or whatever your activity to fall apart. So you have to be ready to pick up all those pieces and step up and just go with that. And then two, how would you measure the results? You have to evaluate, right? Every year, every time you do something, after you're done with the event, come back, brainstorm, talk about it. What worked? What didn't work? What can we do better? And two, how are you measuring this? You know, and again, it could be easy measures. For example, maybe you want to increase participation of our ELF families, so attendance will be critical. Maybe it could be something that they're working on and you want them to, the student needs to bring something back. So you tracking. Did they work with the student? Did they read books? So again, what is one measurement that you are trying to measure? What is it that you're measuring for? And then two, make sure that whatever you do, that you are aligning it with your school improvement plan. And also with the NC STAR indicator, the E1.06, and align all that, because then your plan is going to have more validity. You're going to have more support from your school administrators, from your teachers, because you are aligning all this with your SIP. And we know that SIP plan is all about student academics, student achievement. So you will not go wrong if you do those things. And then in the bottom, you will see that there is a template that will guide you with the action plan that's more focused on Epstein's The 6 Pillars. And again, you could create your own template. I think that sometimes we get so scared when we look at all these different frameworks, right? You're like, oh my God, I have to follow it the same way. No, be creative. Think about it from what works for you, what's going to work for your population, what's going to work for your school, what's going to work for your classroom. Sometimes we take for granted that we have to understand our own population of students and their needs. So what might work on this school district might not work for yours because it's totally different. So again, it's about what works for your school, what works for your students, what works for your ELL population, what works for your school. Again, it's all about you. It's not about Wake County. It's not about other counties. It's about your own school district. It's about your own school, your own families. And again, I want to leave you with this quote that says, low parental engagement is generally not an indicator of low interest, but rather of community barriers that prevent schools from effectively engaging families. We have to be able to understand what those barriers are if we truly want to engage our families. So now I'm open for any questions, concerns, input.
Thank you, Maria Rosa. I was looking at the questions box and we have some questions. So please, if you have more questions, please just feel free to type. If you want to participate, we can unmute you, so raise your hand. And while you check your audio, let me double check some of the questions that we had before. And we have one question. We also have some of the other speakers today. So if you also want to contribute, just let me know. If you have a specific question for one of the team members, they can also help you. So question number one, it says, oh, no, a lot of comments. Like, I love these ideas. I was like looking for the questions, and most of the questions I think we answer is about the webinar resources. So please make sure that when you visit the PD dashboard, that's our main page. But the first link says webinar resources. And when you click, you will see all the different resources for this webinar series. So we have a lot of these ideas, pre and post surveys and evaluations, reflections, night job, great job to the team. You really do need, oh, there is something here. You really need buy-in. The more people you have to support you, the more and successful it will be. So this was tied to our second session about getting collaboration from your team. And maybe if Sandra wants to talk about it later. And we have one question just came in. It says, they want to know about the book that you recommended, Dr. MariaRosa, the first book about the framework. So if I know we have the links and the covers in the first slide deck, but if you have the title, that might help our participants.
Yeah, the frameworks, you could just Google them, right, by the names. But also there were some books that we recommended, and they are in the first presentation that we did. If you could go there, or maybe we could send those links later on, Xatli, so they could have that information.
Perfect, thank you. We have another question. What is a barrier that our families may experience? Is it only language related?
No, there's a lot of barriers. And it's interesting you asked that, because when I was doing my research, and I've been doing family engagement for the past, let's see, my son is 14, 15, 16, for 17 years. That's how I remember. That's how long it's been. And when I started doing my research on family engagement and talking about the barriers, it's interesting to find that the research also kind of mirrors the barriers that we see from our families, because I also survey families. I oversee a program that is Family Academies, and we go into different schools and different communities to provide free parent workshops, and we always survey them, right? And we talked, I want to know what are some of the barriers. And interesting to say, some of the barriers are, of course, language is one, transportation, childcare. A lot of times is intimidation of the school system. A lot of times is defining the role of the school, right, and the role of the parents, like defining that. What does that mean? And also, it's just a lack of knowledge, but it's never been a lack of motivation. And sometimes I hear people saying, oh, these families don't care. No, it's not that they don't care. It's just that they don't see their role as to be in the school all the time. Their role is to be at home and to support the culture of the home. And I think we need to keep that perspective. And that's why I keep saying, you need to ask them. You need to hear from those families. Equity is about giving those families what they need, but we need to listen to them, because when we do that, we are becoming closest to those that are being affected. And when we get closest to those that are being affected, then we could hear their narrative, and then we could really understand their perspective.
Okay, thank you. We have a participant who wants to speak. Melanie, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Melanie, what is your question? Okay, I'm going to read another question while she sets her mic. So we have, what is the best way to advocate for interpreters and translators?
the best way to translate is to go through to the policy, right? There's a federal policy that says that we need to provide interpreters and translators. Otherwise, you're violating the civil rights of that family. And just so you know, big districts got in trouble a few years ago for not providing interpreters and translators. And let me tell you, they got in trouble, and now they're providing interpreters and translators. Again, it's also tapping into Title I and Title III's funds. And we have to provide interpreters. If we truly want family engagement to do that, go to the policy.
Correct, MariaRosa, and thank you for mentioning the Civil Rights Act, because based on this act, all our families should receive the information in a language that they understand, and they should have the opportunity to receive interpretation services if they need it. And also the question mentioned communications that are sent home. So the act also mentions this, and this is not only for the schools, it's a federal law that is for all the different organizations in a state, because we have such a large community that are immigrants and have another language at home, that this is a requirement. And as I think MariaRosa also mentioned, there are different titles of federal law, like ESSA, Title I and Title III, have some provisions that allow the schools to use some funds for this specific task, that is parent outreach. Okay, let me see if we have another question. Well, there is a comment, MariaRosa. Thank you for sharing the questions for family engagement, the surveys. I plan on using them. They're really good. We have a question. Are the parent and community engagement liaisons at the school level paid by specific funds?
So in Wake County, we have parent liaisons, and it varies, right? So principals have the flexibility to sometimes combine different funds to create positions. Sometimes it's through Title I that they create those positions. So again, it's up to the principal, who is considered to be the building leader, to kind of create that. And again, they have the flexibility with their budget. But again, I know that we have some schools, there are Title I schools that have a high free and reduced students, so some have parent liaisons. Sometimes I know some schools that the principal just needed to have one, and she was creative. She created some funds and some PTA funds, I believe PTA funds as well, to create a position.
Yes, and maybe we can invite Christopher. He was our speaker for the 4th session, and he shared as well how part of the project and everything that he was developing, he shared how they use, what kind of funds were used for this. So I don't know if Christopher, if you have your audio and you can share something about it. While he says that, I'm going to check. It's 4:32, so we are going to have 5 more minutes if you can stay with us. If not, feel free to leave. We're going to share the recording and the slide deck on our webinar resources in the PD dashboard. And let's see if Christopher is there. We have another question. Let me see. We're talking about, let me see. I don't think we have any more questions. We were asking about if this template has been shared in NC Start for school improvement. Our participants said it could be a really good resource to have there. Do you know, MariaRosa, if this has been shared?
I'm not sure, because again, anybody could use whatever template they want.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so, and I know, yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, it's optional, but you could share it.
Yeah, and I know for our Luan, I know that's your question. I know Alessandro Montanari, he's the one that works with NC Start, and he uploads the different resources to the NC Start system based on the different indicators that they have. So maybe this could be an opportunity to see if he has that kind of resources for the indicator that is connected to family engagement. I'll try to reach out to him and see if he has something like that. And maybe this could be that opportunity to cross collaborate with this. So I think one question, could this template and all this information be applied to just one classroom or individual classroom, or it has to be at the school district level?
No, that's what I kept saying. This could be your own classroom plan. It could be a school plan. It could be whatever you want it to be. But again, but when you make it your plan, right, as for your own classroom, you could also link it to the big family engagement plan. So it could be part of your SIP plan, but it could be a subcategory, right? This is what you're doing for your ELL students, but also it could be from a classroom perspective. This is what I'm doing to engage my families.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. If you can help us with this, Maria Rosa, and also Sandra, I know she's connected, and her session was specifically about how to collaborate with the school administrators in this process of creating the plan. So let me read the question. It says, how do you approach an administration that gives limited support? So what kind of ideas, strategies do you think, Maria Rosa, while I unmute Sandra?
You have to understand, they need to understand that family engagement is crucial, right? It's 50 years plus of research that says that when families are engaged, the kids are going to do better academically, attendance, self-esteem, right? Parents' self-esteem as well as the students academically. So again, they might be limited in time, but they could still be part of to give you feedback. The school has to buy in, right? Because it is crucial. If it's part of the NC, what do you call that? It's part of the Title I plan. It's also part of ESSA. So it's not something that you're just coming out of the blues and say, oh, by the way, we got to do this. No, there's research to support that, and maybe too, you could approach that from, we want to have more engagement from my ALL families. I need your support. I feel that if they are engaged more, they could do better academically, and we could evaluate that to see how that might work, and we could start small and then see if that work, and if that work, we could add more to it. So if you kind of approach it in that way, hopefully there will be some buy-in.
Thank you. And let me see if Sandra is online and she can share how she started this collaboration in her school district.
Thank you so much, Xatli and Dr. Rangel, for allowing me to participate in this very important event. I really appreciate it. What I would like to suggest is that when it comes to administrators, sometimes we have to follow a similar process to the one that we have in place for the families, because with administrators and assistant principals in general, oftentimes they don't know that they can be included. And I know it sounds weird, but it is the truth. So what I would really recommend is to take some time as a parent engagement leader to go to the school where you want the parent engagement event to be carried out, or the administrator in your own district or community, and visit that administrator to propose and to explain the pros of the strategies to involve and include speakers of other languages, and start planning together. Because most of the time, the administrators want to be part of the plan. They want to show also that this is not an exclusive work of the EL teacher or the person in charge of federal programs, because they also need to show in their evaluations that they are taking vital part, an active part of this type of project. So my suggestion is to try the most possible to find a place, and even if you want to bring some food like you did it with the parents, or some tokens that are elusive to our cultures or to the cultures of those kids from the Middle East, and engage the principals in that conversation. Like, we're going to be doing this here in your school because these are the benefits of the experience. So remember, administrators in general they love to be included also. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And one last question before we close today. It says, have any of you, our guest speakers, tried a virtual event with parents during the past weeks?
What I'm doing is through one of the programs that I oversee is the Family Academies, and we have a Facebook page that was dead. I mean, it was like nobody would visit it, nobody cared for it, and we actually revived it due to COVID-19. And let me tell you, in 23 days, we had over 8,000 folks visiting our page, and we have engaged with over 2,000 families. But then again, Wake County is huge, and we do sessions on Tuesdays and Fridays at 4:30. We do Spanish sessions, and then at 4:30 English, and then 6:30 Spanish. So we are communicating through Facebook, answering questions, providing them with strategies, making them understand the different platforms, how to, also with reading, when you read to your child, what kind of modeling the type of questions. So we have been using Facebook. It's a platform to reach these families. And let me tell you why. A lot of our ELL families or immigrant families, right, they might not know how to create an email, or how to get into a Zoom or Google Meet. But I'm going to tell you something. They know how to go to that Facebook page. They know how to find us. So again, utilize that platform to communicate with your parents virtually, because you know what, the Zoom and the Google Meet requires for them to download an application, and sometimes they don't even know how to do that.
Thank you, Maria Rosa. And also, just one last question. It says, regarding interpreters and translators, a lot of the small counties who have Spanish interpreters available have this available. Let me see, I can read. But then what resources do you have available to for other languages, such as Mandarin or Portuguese? Do you know where they can access some resources? And I will answer to that question. If you follow our Facebook group, if you join, we have a section that is multilingual resources, and we have linked there plenty of activities and different apps, digital tools that are in different, I think 15 plus different languages. So that's something we have online. I don't know if you have something that you have shared through Wake County, or maybe Sandra in Robeson County, or any other of our participants, if you have something you could share.
I think we have some PowerPoints not in Chinese, but I think we have some in Korean, definitely Arabic and Swahili, because those are like the most common languages that we tend to do parent trainings. But yeah, I will encourage you guys to visit the website and the link that Xatli just mentioned, because there's a lot of information there.
Yes, and one of our trainers for the L support team, she's creating a webinar, designing a webinar to share some activities to reach out to families during remote learning. So stay tuned in our listserv. We're going to share this information so you will be able to participate in this other webinar and get these other ideas and information to use during virtual learning. So thank you very much. This is the end of our session. The information on the screen. You're going to receive your certificate of attendance in a couple of weeks. If this is the first time that you join us, you will have time until Monday, May the 18th, to watch the recordings. We have everything in our webinar resources page in the bit.ly PD dashboard. If you check there, once you click on the recording, it asks for your registration. So that's how we capture your email and we know that you are watching this recording. So we will have that report. If we download the report by May 18th, next Monday, we're going to go with that. So if you finish, you maybe watch one or the other sessions that have been offered during this week, you will get that certificate. The total is 5 sessions, so you're going to receive 5 contact hours or the number of sessions that you attended. So thank you very much, all our guest speakers. Thank you everyone for staying with us. It's 15 minutes after our session has ended and we still have 140 people. So thank you very much for staying with us. We're gonna stop the recording, but we're going to stay here for a couple of minutes in case someone wants to raise their hand and ask a question. Thank you again to our guest speakers, Christopher Goodnight, Sandra Lopez, Maria Uribe, and Adriana, and especially to Dr. Rangel, who started this webinar series and has helped us wrap up everything and put it all the pieces together today.